Aloha kumehana kako, e no mako I ka malaniu o Helemoa o wau o Monte McComber, ea ka ukana o Aaron Sala, and ea no o Manu, boy.
Aloha kako.
Ka mea kipa, he kanaka kaulana, he kumu kula no ho'i, he kumu olelo Hawaii, kanaka no iau no ho'i. Yeah.
So, kanaka kupanaha.
Ai, kulole.
Mahalo anui. And so to all of our alumni out there, you're going to be hearing sounds in the background because there's always new developments and lots of hana happening here at Royal Hawaiian Center at Helumoa. Get your grove on.
Ai, kulole.
So aloha kako.
Aloha.
So pihe, do ke hava o mane?
Kama iliau o kalamai. Ea kupolo kalamu o keeping it pono. So
Keeping it pono.
So we're really here to celebrate Mahina Olala Hawaii. And it's a special kind of gathering for the three of us because we're all three cultural directors of the Royal Hawaiian Center. And so as Manu was alluding to earlier, there's lots of noise, lots of coloring in the background because we always have things happening here at Helumoa. We're really proud to be products of Hawaii, but also to be a part of her legacy here at Royal Hawaiian Center and sharing that really with Manu, who is really responsible for Kia Waho of the Royal Hawaiian Center.
Oh, Aaron, you're too kind.
Oh,
But
mahalo
mahalo anui kako. And you know, and when we speak Hawaiian, and we always try to unuhi mahope to translate after, because we want to make sure that everybody feels comfortable with our speaking. You know, we went to Kamehameha at a time. When I went to Kamehameha back in the day, I studied Japanese. Nihongo benkyo shimashita. And yet, the relevance of Olelo Hawaii, of Mo'omeheu, which is culture, of Meheuheu, traditions, and Loina, and all of that is so important to our world right now here at Helumoa, but especially as we celebrate the Lahanau of Ke'eli and also mark Mahina Olelo Hawaii, Hawaiian Language Month. Now, there are many people who will argue that every month is Hawaiian Language Month, and I agree. But February was set aside back in the day, and so here we are honoring our Olelo Makuahine, and I'm so happy to be here with both of you.
Manu, you talked about Ke'eli Kolani, and Ke'eli Kolani has a real special, attachment because of her relation to Hawaii. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Ruth Ke'eli Kolani is a cousin of Bernice Pauahi, but they were more like sisters because they were both raised by Kekua Nao'a and also Kina'u. Ke'eli Kolani and Pauahi are both granddaughters of Ka'oleo Ku and great-granddaughters of Kamehameha. And so the thing about Ruth Ke'eli Kolani, however, is that because they were so different looking, because Pauahi was very stylish and very, and just the body beautiful and lots of beautiful clothes and what have you. Although Ruth Ke'eli Kolani, she loved her fashion as well, but she was big and she was often teased by foreigners who came into Hawaii who didn't understand who she was. And because she was so big, and she kind of spoke with kind of a nasal tone because she had some ihu pilikia that they really didn't know who she was until they found out that she was the largest landowner in Hawaii at a particular time in history. So, but the thing about Ruth Ke'eli Kolani that for our Kamehameha alumni, and we all should know, is that if it were not for Princess Ruth Ke'eli Kolani, there would be no Kamehameha schools. So because she went to fight in probate court for the lands that belonged to both Kamehameha IV and Kamehameha V, and they both passed away, and their father, Kekua Nao'a, still held those lands, and she had to fight for those lands, and she won in probate court. So when that happened, and she dies in 1883, and so she wills all of her lands to her kaikaina, and she refers to Bernice Pauahi Bishop as her kaikaina, or younger sibling, of the same sex. That's how we say that in Hawaiian. Kaikua ana, older sibling of the same sex and what have you. But if it were not for Ruth Ke'elikolani, there would be no Kamehameha. 360,000 acres of land that she won in probate court. Most of those lands were on Hawaii Island. But these lands right here in Waikiki and Helumoa are among the acreage that add into that 360,000 acres. But for our graduates, for our fellow Kamehameha alumni, you need to understand that 99% of the revenue generated to educate our lahui and to also be leaders in our community is generated from 1% of the land. And this particular center, built in 1978, 79, 1980, became known as the crown jewel of Bishop Estate or Kamehameha schools. It was not meant to be a beautiful cultural gathering place at all. It was just concrete blocks that were meant to generate revenue, and it did for years and years and years and years.
So Manu, you talked about Royal Hawaiian Center being these concrete buildings, right? And at that time in the 70s, it really was about structure and stamina and strength, and that was the architecture of the time.
Yeah.
But in 2007, when you came to Royal Hawaiian Center, you were all in the midst of a really large renovation of rethinking what the center meant to Pauahi's legacy, what the center meant to Waikiki and Hawaii. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so there's two things I think that Royal Hawaiian Center represents again, the economic engine of Kamehameha Schools, or Bishop Estate as it was formerly known. But it's also the place or the general area, Helumoa, where the will of Bernice Pauahi was finalized in 1883. So the idea after the initial construction of Royal Hawaiian Center in 1980 or so, 78, 79, 80, really had nothing to do with culture, nothing to do with anything except making money. And so there was a sort of a revolution that occurred around 2000 or 1999 and 2000 at Kamehameha, where they added into their education and economics values, they also added in community and culture, and that changed everything. So that's why we talk about earlier the amount of the vast amount of acreage, especially on Mokuoke'awe, on Hawaii Island, where most of Keli'i Pauahi's lands are. They don't generate income. But now Kamehameha, because the values have changed, they spend tons of money to reforest and to take care of those lands here. So in 2007, or 2005, I guess it was really, when we had a whole new mindset for commercial real estate lands of Kamehameha schools, especially Royal Hawaiian Center, there was an out-of-the-box idea to completely redo the center, to open it up, and to create the Royal Grove. And the one thing that we have been criticized for years was deleting the bridge between the second floor, Building B, and Building C. That made a big difference in retail, but it was done on purpose so that these lands below, and you'll see the Apua Kehau water feature and the Ka'ikena Ho'olua Pauahi statue and the landscape. And those lands are set in what we call the Royal Grove, are set aside on purpose. And so also in the Royal Grove is Helumoa Hale, which is, even after Kamehameha sold the ground lease, but not the land, to another entity, that room, Helumoa Hale, and the Royal Grove are set aside on purpose, in part for you, the graduates of Kamehameha schools. And we've had many fabulous, over the edge alumni event over here at Royal Hawaiian Center. But not just for you, but to help to interpret our heritage, our mana, our ho'oelina, our mo'oku'auhau or mo'olelo for the world. So there's nowhere else. Everyone is trying to sort of follow our lead, but I say this is not a well-kept secret. If anybody else wants to do what we're doing, go. But it makes sense because Royal Hawaiian Center continues to be the best destination for shopping, dining, entertainment, and cultural programming anywhere in Hawaii. So get your grove on. Welcome to Royal Hawaiian Center.
Mahalo.
Hemai.
Aloha. Mahalo.
You know, you alluded to it talking about probate court too, and parentage. But could you talk a little bit about Kekipo'olua and
Yeah, so this is a thing that when you're not in our particular, family or in our world, the idea of po'olua or having two fathers is not understood at all. Let's go before Ke'ili Kolani and let's go to Kamehameha himself. So Kamehameha Ekahi or Pai'ea Kamehameha also is thought to have two fathers, Kahekili of Maui and Kalani Kupuapa I Kalani Nui Keoua of Kohala. Same with and how that happens is because of the pre-planned relations among the ali'i that were approved by those above them. If there was a child conceived around the same time, both fathers were acknowledged. And so that Keiki Ali'i, again, everything is pre-planned, then inherits the mana and the genealogy of both of them. In the case of Ruth Ke'eli Kolani, her father, Matayo Kekuanaoa, shares that designation with Kahala'i'a. And so, and people will say, well, it's either one or the other, just biologically and what have you. But in the days of the ali'i, throughout the early to mid to the latter part of the 19th century, the Council of Chiefs or the ali'i or the genealogists were the ones who would acknowledge that. And this is really interesting. And I really didn't think we were going to go there, but thank you, Monte, for bringing us there. But as much as February 9th is 1826 is considered the Lahanau, or the birthday of Ruth Ke'eli Kolani, others will say that her birthday was really in June. And the reason we know this, and she actually picked her own birthday because that was the birthday of her cousin, Alexander Iolani Liho Liho. But the reason why we know this is because her mother, Ruth Ke'eli Kolani's mother, Kalani Pawahi, died giving birth to Ruth Ke'eli Kolani in June of 1826. So, I mean, but we as graduates of Kamehameha and as friends and all that, we don't have the same kuana ike. We don't have the same worldview or the same values or even the same religion as our kupuna per se. And so we should not judge. And one thing about Ruth is that she didn't really care what anybody thought about anything. She really didn't. She was so kupa. Not just Olelo Hawaii. You want to talk to her, you learn Hawaiian, and then you come talk to her. But she was kind of but she had, and Pawahi remembers her as being the most kind-hearted, benevolent, beautiful, soft wahine. And yet you look at her and she's just this big wahine pu'i.
Right, very imposing.
Yeah.
Let's talk about you for a little bit. So you studied Japanese, right? As a student.
Hi, so desu.
May nei oy komuai ka olelo Hawaii. Like, how did you start learning Hawaii? And then there's much kuhilima action as Manu talks. So
Yeah.
really wanna
Well,
talk
I'll tell you what, if I could just grab a sip of a muki kiba, and you can not have to include this part. And if anybody wants to, I have, and this is real Hawaii, honest to God, seriously. So I was born at a time. I was born in Waialae, Kahala, and I used to hate to even own that before, but Kahala because it's kind of a upscale area. But back in those days, it really wasn't. But those are also Pauahi lands. But I was raised in Ainahaina and also my grandma's house in Kapahulu. In our house in Ainahaina, we were surrounded by Hawaiian music all the time. And so, and what we had on our, if you know what a record player is or stereo, the records were Gabi Pahinui, Guava Jam, Sunday Manoa, Vicky E. Rodriguez and family, Palani Vaughn, Don Ho, and so on. So and my parents both sang for the Prince Kuhio Hawaiian Civic Club. That was led by our auntie and uncle, Uncle Kihei Brown and Auntie Anuhea Brown. And so, the idea of Hawaiian language, even back then at Kamehameha, it really wasn't a big thing. But we already knew who we were, I would say, just because how we were raised. I was fascinated by my grandma and her, and she's originally from Kohala, from Niuli'i Kohala on the Big Island. And my grandfather was born at Ainahau, right over here in Waikiki, at the home of his grandfather, Archibald Cleghorn. And so the coming together of the two of them, raising us, we, and yet no one really spoke Hawaiian in our family at all. It just wasn't. And when I told my grandma I was taking Japanese at Kamehameha, she was not happy. Only because it was just a thing for them. Learn English. If you want to be successful, learn English, learn English. But long story short, after Kamehameha, I went to the University of Hawaii, and Larry Kimura was my first kumu there. I went right into second year Hawaiian. And then I was asked politely to leave the university and maybe try community college. And after that, community college told me, why don't you just come back later when you're ready? Because at that time, I was majoring in Sandy Beach. But in between the Larry Kimura influence and the Hawaiian music influence in my ear, and Uncle Mahi Beamer, and my kumu, Robert Casimiro, another person who came into my world that really moved me far along in Olelo, Hawaii, was Ilealoha Beniamina. We were very, very close friends. From Ni'ihau, she's a class of 1974, graduate of Kamehameha. But my story is, and I don't want to take too much of your time, but luckily I've been in the right place at the right time. So I'm so grateful to have been here at Helumoa to help with this Kamehameha School's asset. I'm so grateful to know my two friends right here, Sala and McComber, because we are really blessed, and we are both. I speak for all of us. So grateful to have also been raised at the right time. Now this is one Kanaka, because I'm part Sala also. But tell me about your story.
This is not about us.
Well, I'll tell you his story, because who he's studying with for his PhD dissertation, is that what you call it? I don't know, because I know more. Uncle Mahi Beamer and my kumu Robert Casimiro and all of our Randy Fong and all of our Kamehameha Ohana really shaped us well and prepared us to be able to interpret or reinterpret and embrace our culture here at Helumoa. And so when we hear things like February, or Oiahoi, or Pepeluwali, Kamahina Olelo Hawaii, February is Hawaiian Language Month. And O Pepeluwali, Kamahina Lahanau, or Keali'i Ke'eli Kolani, we understand that. And it means something here. And I'm so proud that Royal Hawaiian Center continues to honor the tradition and the heritage of our Lahui Kanaka. And it's not just for us to be exclusive, it's for Kako Apau. And for all of you graduates, always bring everybody into our story, because our story is not to be only shared with ourselves, it is for everyone. Ano laila, aloha pumeha na Kako Apau loa, ke aloha.
Aloha.
Aloha, mahalo.